We are back talking hoops, talking Suns basketball, as you can probably see from the title of the video. I'm excited to talk Suns basketball. I was at the game where Cam Johnson hit the buzzer beater, went for 38 against the Knicks. I was there in Phoenix, and it really dawned on me at that time, and it started to sink in of like, oh, these are all good things that are happening. The Chris Paul injury is rough, but if you can get past that, Booker being out, seem like bad things on the surface, but A, odds-wise, this is the best you're going to get, and B, I got a couple other things. We'll get into it in a second. I just wanted to say off the top, right before we went live, the Calvin Ridley story broke about him being suspended for next season in the NFL. And it made me think of something that scares me, which is that this happened exactly during the time where he was going on a break for mental health. And between this and the Ben Simmons thing of all of a sudden the mental health issues are just gone when the actual underlying problem gets fixed or the player gets traded or something like that, it really scares me that, and I don't know if this is happening or not, but it scares me that teams are using mental illness as like a crutch because no one is comfortable asking like, hey, is he actually going through struggles or are you just hiding under this? So I just wanted to point out that that feels kind of gross. And I don't know if that's the case, but now between Simmons and Ridley, it's like, I don't know where we're going to go with that. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the Suns. Okay, let's dive in. So first things first, we know that Chris Paul is injured. Let's see if there's a timeline available. And it's still up in the air, but he's traveling with the team. He's around there. I don't think it'll be that bad. No surgery. Anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. And this was from the 20th, which is already... I guess you guys can't see this, but we're talking about almost 3 full weeks ago. So we're looking at 3 to 5 weeks from now. He'll be back for the playoffs. There's really no doubt about it. And the thing that I actually subtly like here is that Chris Paul has been banged up at bad times throughout his whole career, right? He's been snake bitten by that kind of stuff. But this is a thumb injury. It's not great for his shooting. That is a concern. You have to assume that he's going to get back to the level that he should be at. I'm throwing that out the window. And if you don't feel good about that, then okay, then this might not be for you. But his legs are going to be fresh. I don't think you're going to have to worry quite as much about hamstring pulls and stuff like that. Now, that can always happen. I guess there's an argument to be made that when you're in better shape and used to it all the time, your body reacts a little bit better. But I think it's like similar to the thing we saw with LeBron in the bubble season, right? He had all that time off, and then you knew when he came back and could just focus on the one thing for a month, he was going to be really difficult to deal with completely fresh. And I think that's valuable to Chris Paul's legs and his overall psyche. So I'm not saying that him busting his thumb is necessarily good, but there's some good to be made of it. And Booker was out during that Knicks game too, with COVID stuff. Hopefully won't be a long absence for him. And that too, the one thing that's undeniable is the Suns are the best team in the West. They're the best team in the NBA. And if people aren't really acknowledging that, then, I mean, A, just look at the record. B, watch them play. They're just much better. I think they're better coached. I think they're deeper. A million reasons. But I feel like the odds will never be better than they are right now because we're living in this moment where Booker is out. And maybe by the time you're watching this, he's already back, whatever. And Chris Paul is out. So you can get them at plus 450 to win the title right now. And while that doesn't seem like a ton, I just think they're going to be big favorites in every series they play in. And there's no one here in the West that I'm actually afraid of. We'll go through the teams. And by the time they start getting healthier, Booker comes back, Chris Paul, you're going to hear, oh, he's 2 weeks away, he's starting to do on-court stuff. The odds are just going to plummet. So I would get it in as soon as you possibly can because you look around, we can take it, I guess, from the top. Golden State has issues. The Draymond injury is much scarier than the Chris Paul injury because his is a back. I mean, Chris Paul, his legs will be fresh. Will Draymond be healthy? I don't know, and I don't think they can win without him. Clay hasn't looked very good either, and they just don't have a lot of size. I'm not saying the Warriors can't win. Of course they can. But they have more issues than the Suns do because the depth takes over for the Suns at some point. And the Warriors have depth, but it's all guards that can shoot, which is cool, I guess. But you have to worry about them being big enough even with Draymond. So I think the Suns would be favored in that series, and that's the 2 seed. Now, if we're talking about Memphis, they're a problem for anyone, but they're not even close to as deep as the Suns, right? Like, it's not even remarkably... the difference is insane, honestly. And when I watched the Suns without their 2 best players and still thought, they have a lot of good players on this team, I don't think I'd be doing that if Ja and Jaren Jackson, or whoever you think the second best player is, maybe Dillon Brooks, who's not actually playing, but I just don't see the depth there. The Grizzlies are a young team. I hope they go on a run. It'd be really fun, but it's hard to imagine them doing it in the first year through this thing. This is the first year that they've arrived on the scene. Like, we're here. This is going to be our serious time. And historically, it takes a little bit of time. The Jazz, everyone has issues with them. The Gobert thing, I think they're a safe bet. They're like a poor man's Suns, right? They're solid all around. They're tough. They have a good big man. They have a bunch of guards that can play, but they don't have the star power that the Suns have, nor the depth. And I don't know what would separate the Jazz from the Suns unless Gobert just destroys Ayton, which is possible, I guess. But even then, it would take Mitchell outperforming Booker to a crazy extent to make up for all the lack of depth that the Jazz have compared to the Suns. So I'm not terribly concerned about that. The next 2 teams are actually the ones I'm more concerned about, which is Dallas. But that's really just Luka, the one-man show. I mean, I see spots where Bridges can really defend Luka. I watched Bridges defend RJ Barrett in that game after Randall got thrown out. And he is so long. Watching him in person is ridiculous. His speed, his athleticism, and just his wingspan and length. It's hard to do anything against him. So I think you have a bunch of defenders. And Chris Paul, right? You still have him to pester if you want to go small. So I don't know. I mean, Dallas likes to run these small ball lineups, likes to take the air out of the ball, but so do the Suns. Like, that's going to be a really slow-paced series if it ever happens. And you're relying on Luka to be better in the half court than Chris Paul and Devin Booker, which is a really tall order in a long series. And again, there's no depth in Dallas. So that would be an interesting one to watch, but I just think their style is too similar to the Suns and not as good. You need to try to speed the Suns up, probably, even though that's proved to be almost impossible. The Nuggets are the one team that can kind of make waves against everybody, right? Because if you have Jokic in the middle, Ayton can't handle him, nobody in the league can. And if you get Murray and Porter Jr. back, now we're talking about something serious, but that's twice as unlikely as it is that Chris Paul comes back healthy. So I worry about them, and if not, the depth of the Suns will really run through this team. So they're actually the number 1 team that I would be worried about with this Suns bet, aside from the Warriors, I guess, if Draymond is healthy. And who knows if they'll even play each other, because I can't imagine the Nuggets dropping that far. So that would probably only be like a Western Conference Finals kind of thing, which maybe they'll get there. Who knows? Minnesota, pretender. I'm not that worried about them. Too young. Guard play I don't believe in. I mean, imagine Chris Paul just scorching D'Angelo Russell or Devin Booker or whatever. I don't think Edwards is ready to take the mantle and be the ball handler there. And Towns is good, but I'm not worried about them. Clippers. Now, if the Clippers somehow got Kawhi and Paul George back, then a 1 versus 8 here, I know that's not exactly how it works, but it might be, would be terrifying. And the same goes for the Lakers with Anthony Davis and LeBron, I guess. But I don't know. You're going to tell me the Suns are going to lose to these 500 teams? I just don't think so. They just execute so well. Down the stretch of games, even when they're close, they're getting buckets all the time. Their efficiency numbers are through the roof. Their clutch numbers are through the roof because they know exactly what to run. They're so well coached, and that pick and roll is deadly. And when the pick and roll fails, you have Booker on an island because you had to commit 3 people to the pick and roll. So it's like, what are we supposed to do here? And there's no answer. They're just very efficient on offense, and they have so many wing defenders. Between Bridges and Crowder on the wing, that's I mean, that's how you stop Paul George and Kawhi, right? Like, even if you needed to do that, I think they're equipped to do it. And then you have Ayton patrolling the middle. So, yeah, I mean, the Pelicans, I guess they've been on a little bit of a heater. They had won a couple in a row. They lost one last night, I think. But they're looking pretty good. But again, are these the teams we're worried about? I don't think so. So, the East is tougher. Like, no doubt about it. If we're talking about winning the championship, which is what my bet would be, but then again, by the time you get there, you can hedge it in an elimination game and not worry too much. So I can't really consider the East. But yeah, the East is tougher than the West. It just is. Sixers are scary. Heat are deep. The Heat are like the Suns East, kind of. They just run their offense well. They're gritty. They're deep. I would worry about that team the same way I would anybody else. I think you can get good odds on the Heat, but not quite going out on that limb yet. But the Sixers, Bucks, Bulls, Celtics, Cavs lost Jared Allen. I don't know how that will work out. Even the Raptors are frisky. The Nets are still in the mix, obviously. The Hawks aren't an easy out. I mean, that's a bloodbath compared to the West, which is also good. It's a deep league in general. I just see the Suns being head and shoulders above everyone. And if you look at the stats, and this is the thing really about it, you remove Booker's 25 points per game from the equation, and you start to realize, and Paul's, so this is 40 between Booker and Paul, right? Not to mention over 15 assists. So your usage is cut in half without these two best players. And you're getting a bunch of games where these role players can begin to get comfortable, where Cam Johnson can shoot as much as he wants to. I mean, how many times did he shoot in this game? I'm looking at the Knicks. Wrong Cam. Battle of the Cams. Cam Reddish got put in the dirt. And Cam Payne, actually, played really well. 17 and 16 assists. Ridiculous. But Cam Johnson shot 16 times. 12 threes. Hit 9 of them. He's a guy capable of doing this kind of stuff off the bench. And then you're also moving Payne back to the bench, which was a spark plug in last year's playoffs. You have Shamet off the bench. This team is ridiculous. Biyombo came in this game. He can serve a role. McGee can play a little bit of a role. I mean, you're already... This is 5, 6, 7, 8 deep without your two best players. They're 10 deep, legit. And no one else can match up like that. And they all fill a role. And I think they're all going to get more confident when Paul is out, because you need to figure out how to run the offense so that when you have a Cam Johnson capable of coming in and saying, I can run the show for 5 minutes while you guys are on the bench. And Cam Payne too, like when that lineup is so much more confident due to this time, when CP3 comes back, you're going to have a bench mob that's terrifying because they're going to destroy every other bench. It's not even going to be fair. It's going to be to the point where their bench might outscore other benches more than their starting lineup outscores other starting lineups. And then you bring in the big guns at the end of the game and you can go with hot hands, and Monty Williams is fully capable of figuring out these kind of rotations. So I'm scared of this team. I just don't see any roadblocks in their way. Who's going to stop this? Aside from Chris Paul never getting healthy, this is a scary, scary depth chart. Because Cam Payne is capable of starting. We saw it last year. And Booker's here. Bridges, I love this kid. He is awesome. Cam Johnson is awesome and know their role. Ayton is the one thing that they really need to do well here, because watching him in person, he got dominated by Mitchell Robinson. 17 and 15, 4 steals, 3 blocks for Robinson. Best game of his career, if you ask me. 8 for 8 from the field. I mean, he was unbelievable in this game. And Ayton had nothing. A couple open dunks, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, 0 steals, 4 for 10 from the field. He had nothing. So they don't need him to be a huge offensive threat. But the one thing that can hold them back is Jokic just eating them alive down low. But you look around, there's really, I mean, I guess Towns, there's not a lot of other offensive centers. If Davis is healthy, maybe. So you're talking about Davis, Towns, and Jokic. You're probably only going to play one of those teams because you're the 1 seed. And all of those teams have flaws elsewhere. So all Ayton has to do is just be a body and survive in there and not get absolutely eaten alive, which, by the way, Jokic is going to do to everyone. It doesn't really matter. But you can't have this kind of performance where Mitchell Robinson is just dunking on you constantly. So Ayton is the only thing that we need to keep an eye on. But honestly, you look at his game log, he doesn't do this most of the time. He had an off night. I mean, I don't want to pick on the guy like crazy. Also, he's only 23. He showed it in last year's playoffs. He looked very good. And then he had 30 and 8, last night as at the time we were recording this. So he bounced back fine. He's perfectly good. He's averaging 17 and 10. Like, he's doing exactly what they need him to be. But he needs to anchor that paint. And they have enough size around him and behind him in defense to make up for the lack of anything else. But he still needs to be the anchor in there. But man, I mean, Cam Payne being healthy makes a really, really big difference for them. It does. Jay Crowder is up to the challenge always. And you have all the there's just no excuse. There's no reason this team can't do it. They almost did it last year. They should have done it last year. And that was with Bridges before he took the leap. I think he's made a big change. His stats are almost the same from this year to last year. But if you just watch him play the eye test, he's so much more comfortable and he's doing more of the little things. And man, I mean, if Giannis doesn't go absolutely apeshit last year, they win the title and they're looking for back-to-back, and their odds aren't as good as they are right now to win. So I don't know what's standing in their way, and I think these odds are going to go away if they get healthy and go on a quick run here. Even without Chris Paul, I think they could go on a run. And then as the playoff picture starts to take more shape, I just see them, those odds are going to plummet from where they are now. They must. And I would really take a long, hard look at this. I mean, this game, the Knicks were up. Let's go to the box score. Or I want the line score, actually. Oh, it's right here in front of me. Knicks got outscored by 13. Knicks were up 12 going into the fourth. And this is against a team with nobody there. And the crowd, I got to say, being at that game, the stadium is beautiful. It was sold out for like the 20th time in a row or something ridiculous. And there was just no give up in that crowd. It stayed loud. Randall got ejected from this game, which the Knicks probably win if he doesn't, but he did. And the loudness, I mean, the volume was insane when he got ejected, and it stayed through the end of the game from that point. They smelled blood in the water. And the Suns were pumping up the crowd. It just feels like the story is right. The vibe is there, which I know is not necessarily quantifiable, but man, it matters to me. You can feel it when you go into the building when some teams have it and some teams don't. So I really think you gotta... People are talking about the Suns, of course, but it's like, oh yeah, the Suns are good. Like, no, this is the team everyone should be looking at. All I hear about is how the NBA is so balanced this year. There's a lot of good teams. All true. There are a lot of good teams. The Suns are 8 wins ahead of everybody else with like 15 to 20 games to go. They might finish 10 games ahead of the rest of the pack. And no one is considering them as the... I'm not saying they're the 70-win Warriors or anything, but... they are the ones with the target on their back, and all they have done is execute every single time. Their differential is better. They never go on losing streaks. I mean, look at this team's schedule. They lost 2 in a row without their best players. Booker was actually in these games, but when Chris Paul was out, they lost by 3 at home to Sacramento. That was an alarming one. And then they got stomped at Portland. And you're like, okay, what's going on? And from there, how many wins in a row is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 wins in a row they ripped off. I feel like nobody talked about that. And they haven't lost 3 in a row all season. I mean, that's insane. So how are you going to beat them 4 times in a series? And you look at this schedule, at Orlando, at Miami's a tough one. How many tough games do they have, right? How many like games that they really might lose do they have? At Miami, 1. Toronto, I really don't think so. Lakers, no. At New Orleans, maybe. they've been pretty good. I'll call it 2 between New Orleans and Toronto. Those are halfies. Versus Chicago, I guess, maybe 3. At Sacramento, at Minnesota, at Denver is a 4th loss. Maybe. Philly, we'll call it 5. Golden State, I guess, maybe one of these 2 at Golden State and Memphis is 6. And then that's pretty much it. I guess at Utah could be 7. So that would have them finish with 62 wins, 62-20 if they lost 7 of these games. And by the way, that's being really aggressive. They could run the table and win every single game here. They really could. So 62 wins, and the next best team is going to have, let's see. I mean, let's just call it the Grizzlies. If everything goes right for a team like the Grizzlies, because the East is a bloodbath, right? So I don't want to even include that. And I think the Grizzlies have a pretty easy schedule from what I remember. And how many losses would they have from, or how many wins? Let's count the wins. So we're at 44. We're trying to get to 62, which won't happen. 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. Brooklyn could be a loss. I won't include that. 51, Golden State, Milwaukee. I'm not going to give auto wins. 52, Phoenix and no auto win. At Utah, at Denver, tough. And maybe New Orleans and Boston. So we're looking at 54 wins. So worst case, the Suns are winning the West by 8 games. I mean, let's look back at last year. It was a 1-game difference in both conferences. The year before, 2.5 in the East, 3.5 in the West. Let's keep going. When's the last time we had an 8-game difference between the 1 and 2 seeds in a conference? We're still looking. 7 games between the Rockets and Warriors. And that was already 5 years ago. 6 games the year before that. Nope. I mean, this one, maybe you can consider that the top 2 seeds were better, but still, that's not the same argument. Here it is. Golden State in 14-15 over the Rockets, 11 games. It's been that long. It's been a long time. And that's how good the Suns are, and that's even with some hobbled players not making it all the way through. So I foresee, you can picture what these games are going to look like, right? You know that even if it's close, which the Suns might make it close, who's bothering them? In the half court of a slow game, who's bothering them? I guess if Luka goes God mode, Ja needs to play with pace, which is probably good, but I don't think you can speed up the Suns. And I don't know if their depth is there and they're too young. I guess you either need the Warriors to get healthy in a hurry, or you need Luka / Jokic to just go truly unbeatable mode. Other than that, I'll take my chances in a long series, and that's just to beat them once. I don't know how often it's going to happen. And the home field thing, I really just can't say enough how cool it was to be at that game. Probably the best regular season game I've ever been to. It's that or the Lynn Sadany game, Knicks against Kobe and the Lakers, when Lynn hit the buzzer beater to win in that one during that whole stretch. But yeah, that Cam Johnson part, he's an elite shooter. They just have so much to offer. I really think Bridges is a guy that could play that, almost that, this is probably disrespectful to Bridges because he's way better, but that Iguodala role that he played on the Warriors when they were winning was so vital because he was doing every single thing that all the other players just didn't need to do. And I see that from Bridges. They can shut down opponents with 2 elite defenders. So even Luka is going to be bothered by the difference between Bridges and Crowder, right? Like they're never going to get tired because they have 2 guys to switch onto him and Chris Paul. It's just Jokic, but that's not really an argument, right? Because Jokic is going to kill everybody. So I just can't see a reasonable way where the Suns don't at least get to the Western Conference Finals. Are they really going to lose to a Clippers team in the first round that's feisty? But come on, like, what are we doing here? It just feels like, I know the traditional thing is that the West is strong, but the East is the stronger conference this year. And there just hasn't been enough chatter about this. All these other teams are not in a perfect spot, except for the Grizzlies, who I think are too young. There's just detractions from every single team. And the Suns can just win so many different ways. And I just really like what they're bringing to the table. And you even go down, like, even look at the player efficiency stuff. JaVale McGee's an efficient player. He's not going to give you everything, but he can get on the court for 5 minutes in a final series. He's proven that. He's a champion. Same thing with, like, Bismack Biyombo. He plays at above average level. Cam Johnson's a gunner, but even him, he doesn't hurt you. Bridges' player efficiency rating, oddly low. I mean, that's weird. But all these guys, they know their exact role, and Chris Paul is due for a ship. We've known this for a while. I see it all coming together for them. And then if you're talking about how they stack up to the East, we don't even need to necessarily go there. It'll only be one of these teams, but we saw them go toe-to-toe with the Bucks. It's not like they can't win that series. They can. It was close. The Sixers, Embiid is a problem for everybody. But Harden, I think, could be shut down by Crowder and Bridges, or at least bothered. So I don't know if that matchup is great. I think the Heat are just a slightly lesser version of the Suns, so I don't know if that goes in their favor. The Bulls aren't really there. I think there's a lot of stuff been thrown around with the Bulls on how they don't beat good teams, which is true, but they're also missing Lonzo and Caruso and have been for a while, so I think those numbers are kind of overstated at this point. It's kind of a talking point that I don't care about. The Celtics, they've been playing unbelievable. Their defense is like the best in the league, but if we get to the point where the Celtics are on this miracle run and meet the Suns in the finals, let's not act like the Suns aren't still prohibitive favorites in that series. They are. Cavs lose Jared Allen, like we said, and the Nets are the one you obviously have to worry about. But even that, you're talking about Seth Curry and Kyrie Irving having to stop Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and I know you could switch Simmons onto there if he ever plays, but I don't know how that's going to go either. And Ayton could really do damage to Drummond. Maybe not on the glass, but on the offensive end. So I think they match up pretty well against the East too, because they have that toughness factor that a lot of these Eastern teams don't have, and the Western teams don't have it either. And yeah, I mean, the X factor might be Ayton. I keep popping his name out of my mouth, but if you look at his playoff stats from last year, I really feel like they were good. We were ready to give him a max contract. Everybody was. And then it just didn't happen. I would like playoffs per game. That'd be cool. Not sure why I don't have it. But even let's just go to the game log. Playoffs. Here we go. I mean, his rebounding numbers, very good. Rebounding the crap out of the ball. Realized that, hey, he knows his role, right? And sometimes he's playing outside of his role while people are hurt and trying to develop new things during the regular season. But that didn't happen here. He was a 2010 guy a bunch. How many 2010 games did he have in the playoffs? 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, that's a 16. 2, I'll count it. 22 rebounds, I'm counting it. 3, 4, a couple of 9s. 5, 6, 7, 8. That's pretty good. I mean, he went 22 and 19 in game 1 of the NBA Finals against Giannis. I know they weren't really matched up with each other, but damn. Let's not forget that they were up 2-0 on the Bucks last year too. And then they collapsed and got killed in game 3 and it all fell apart there, but this just seems safer than people are giving it credit for. I know I'm not going out on a limb to say, oh, the number 1 seed with a huge lead should win the championship. I just feel like the odds haven't adjusted. They should be down near plus 300. And I think they'll get maybe even lower than that once you see them healthy and running through teams. And I just fear that a lot of people are going to miss the boat. So this is a simple one. Go get it in. Get it in there. Get your Suns bet in while you can. I'm a big believer in Monty Williams. I'm a big believer in this team. And I really think that this is the bet to make. But got some extra picks for y'all. Why not? Why not? So, of course, Suns plus 450 to win the finals. See what odds you can get it at whenever you watch this. I have two other long-term ones that I'm interested in. There's division bets available with no one really pays attention to the divisions. I get it, but I do because I wanted to see if I could extract some value here, and I think I have. The Bulls are currently plus 380 to win their division. As of recording this, they're half a game behind the Bucks for that division. So that alone, those numbers are pretty wild. Now, again, I referenced that the Bulls don't do well against good teams, but they are going to get Caruso and Lonzo back. And so if there's a world where the Bucks want to just make sure everyone is healthy and they're not concerned about the seed and they're not that worried about it, I do think those teams are going to try to battle. But for half a point, with DeRozan playing the way he is and Levine healthy and Vucevic in there, and Ayo playing the way he is in a fill-in role and their depth and getting healthier at the right times, it won't shock me if they go on a decent run. The Cavs are falling behind with the Jared Allen injury, probably. I mean, I still love the Cavs, but still. And the plus 380 just seemed like for half a point difference, half a game back, they could close that gap. I also did the same thing with the Nuggets in the West to win their division. Now, they have to pass the Jazz, which is a tall order because the Jazz are healthy now. But the Nuggets could get Murray and Porter back before the end, even if it's only a week. They're 2.5 games back, but they're plus 700 to win the division. And every single night, Jokic could rip off a win. And the way he's playing right now, I don't want to go against him, really. I would love to see those matchups with him against Gobert, and I think we'll get another one of them before the season is over, but I would love a playoff matchup between those two teams. I just think plus 700 to have Jokic throw half a unit on each of these things. I mean, they're not big, but I think they're worth taking a flyer on to close that small of a gap. We still have 15 to 20 games left, and is it going to shock anyone if Jokic goes 20-point, 30-point triple-double in 10 of those games and just decides, this is my year, I'm taking it? Murray comes back, he gives you 20 minutes. Porter comes back, he gives you 20 minutes. Everyone bumps down the depth chart. All of a sudden, they look deeper. They have so many more players, it starts to take shape. And Jokic could do it with any 4 guys off the streets. So, I don't know. Maybe the Jazz stumble. Worth it for plus 700 at the very least. Now, let's talk about tonight. If you're watching this now and live, I appreciate you. Get in the chat. And if you're catching it before these games go off, I like 2 bets for tonight. One is a 3-team parlay of double results. Big favorites, but I like Heat double result against the Rockets. Just got to win the first half and the second half. Wolves, same thing. Double result against the Blazers. They're much better. Win both halves. And then Nuggets double result against the Warriors. The Warriors are sitting everybody tonight. The reason I took the double results is just to pump up the odds. They're much better than a money line kind of bet that wouldn't get you anything. But the double results for all 3 of those games, Heat, Wolves, Nuggets, plus 129. I like that. We like positive odds around here. The last one, Nuggets money line parlayed with Warriors under 107.5 in that game. I just don't believe in the Warriors when they're not playing anybody. It's just going to be a bunch of kids getting slammed around by Jokic as long as he plays. And even if he doesn't, honestly, I know they're on a back-to-back. I think the Nuggets are just a way better team. You'll see the DeMarcus Cousins effect when he comes in and scores 30 randomly, and they just keep the offense moving the same way they do with Jokic. So I like those bets. That comes out to minus 107, the Nuggets money line and the Warriors under team total. Point is, bet the Suns, subscribe to the channel, like the video. This is a like. Hit the noti bell. I don't have a good bell to ding, but, you know, if I did post effects, that's where it would ding. Hit that so you know when we're going live. Jump in the chat. Tell your friends. Tell your mom. Talk about it at the water cooler. Talk to your dog about how fun it is to watch. Bring your hot takes to me. We'll talk about them. We're going to do another episode this week on MLB stuff, rule changes. Next week, we'll probably get into college basketball, March Madness stuff. There's so much going on. Give it a follow at Mike Mush Sports on Twitter and Instagram. We always have picks going up there as well, and posts and takes and all that kind of stuff. For the year to date, we are plus 41.9 units. We did well on UFC this weekend. Covington by decision was a big one for us. And at Mike Mush Sports, you'll get all the picks that you don't get here. But we will be back with more videos, and we will see you then. Peace out.